Good morning. I usually say good evening. Good morning and welcome to Legal Tech Live. This is a special episode, episode 82, with Richard Tromans of ArtificialLawyer. I'm sure all of my listeners and viewers are familiar with Richard, but I'm going to give you a little background on him. He is a returning guest to Legal Tech Live. He was on episode 30. It was our most downloaded episode so far. I imagine this one will blow it out of the water, but please go and listen to both or watch both video replays. Richard has spent 20 years working in the legal sector, focused on UK and global legal markets. He previously worked at Jamati Consultants, LLP in London as a strategy consultant and as the firm's head of research, covering a variety of advisory work, initially in support and then directly for clients across a wide range of jurisdictions and sector focuses. This included law firms, barristers, chambers, and litigation funders. Richard has been doing ArtificialLawyer roughly about the same amount of time that I've been doing Legal Tech Live. I think we started in the fall of 2015, and you followed ArtificialLawyer, really started to kick off, I believe you said, in the summer of 2016, and you were an early guest, and I thank you for coming, Richard. Thank you for spending some time on an early Saturday evening in London. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks. It's a real pleasure. And we were just discussing before we came live, I mean, so much has happened since we first did our very first podcast together.
So much has happened, and we were also discussing that so much was happening when we both kind of got into more of the reporting on legal technology or being commentators on legal technology, that there was some exciting stuff happening and kind of drove us both to do some of this work that we now I enjoy. It looks like you enjoy by the amount of articles you put out. You blow me away with it. You do a really great job. I love reading the blog. Tell us a little bit about how you started, and then tell us for those listeners who may not be familiar.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure some people know the story pretty well, but I mean, basically, I'll give you the 5-second version.
Cool.
So 21 years ago, I started at a little startup magazine near the meat market in Farringdon in London, in a really rundown little office. And it was a funny little magazine, and it was called Legal Week. And It had about 3 journalists, and I was like the 4th or 5th. And it had a group of people had broken away from another magazine. And Legal Week was born, and we had the new Macs, the weird kind of shell-shaped, clam-shaped thing, and all the early sort of like desktop publishing software. So it was kind of like a startup, and I worked there, and I had no intention of joining the legal market at all. I was trying to get onto a national newspaper or something after going through journalism college. And anyway, did that for 5 years. Legal Week took off, and I left it behind. Went and did some other jobs, worked as a management consultant. Scroll forward to about 2016, by which point I'd created my own consulting business. And just after the Brexit vote, in fact, things went a little bit quiet, because most of my clients were kind of a bit sideswiped, because they'd all expected Brexit to be rejected. All the polls were saying Brexit will be rejected, life will carry on as usual,
Right.
And it was like, actually, we're leaving the European Union. And everyone went, oh my God, freaked out. And there was like a real pause, and I just thought, there's nothing is going to happen for the next 4 weeks. I've just got to let people get their heads together. And I'd always wanted to do a blog, because I used to be a journalist before I became a management consultant. And I thought, let's pick a subject that won't upset my clients, because initially I wanted to write about strategy, the business of law firms. And I thought, well, if I write about economics and the business of law firms, eventually the law firm's going to get slightly annoyed with me, because I'm writing about the work that I'm doing for them.
Right.
So I thought, well, let's pick a subject that you're also fascinated in, but won't have anything at all to do really with most law firms, and probably won't catch on at all, and won't become a popular thing, and it'll just be a very little thing, and I can just exercise my writing interests. So I bought the Artificial Lawyer URL and started writing about whatever was, on the horizon. And it just went from there, really. And I really didn't expect more than 20 or 30 readers. I really didn't, honestly.
And now you have a global readership that is very impressive. And you crank out, how many articles a week do you average now?
Well, I mean, in total publishing, it can be as much as 15 a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of those can be provided by other people, like guest posts, and there's the occasional sponsored post, but that's about 2% of the total output. But yeah, it can get. I've been trying to tone it down a bit.
Have you?
Like,
It is a great blog. I love reading it. I read it weekly. I can't read all of the articles that are published there. So there's not enough time. So, but there's always something for those of us who love this space. So I am on the blog weekly. I want to take a second to thank our visitors today. We've got Adam Long here, Ivan Rasich, Joanna Goodman, Sandeep Mehta, and Tom Martin. Thank you all for joining us here. There are, as to be expected, difficulties streaming straight to the Facebook group, which is why this link is now available and people can join us here. Feel free to ask questions. Richard and I, this episode was going to be, when we originally started this episode, some of you may have noticed that the date for the recording of the episode has changed a few times. Richard kindly invited me to be a media partner with him for the Legal Innovators California conference, which was supposed to happen this month, I believe. Or no, excuse me, in June. In June. And for those who are watching or listening later, today is April 4th of 2020, and we are all in quarantine or shelter in place. So we decided to go ahead with this interview, but we want to book in the interview, I think, with discussing the California Legal Innovators California conference. And then we're going to have sort of a general discussion on what's happened in legal tech over the last several years. Richard, how did Legal Innovators come to be?
Okay, well, Legal Innovators started because, as you've probably seen, aside from writing prolifically, too much,
prolifically,
writing too much. My other main thing is I go to a lot of conferences. I chair a lot of panels. I speak a lot of panels, keynotes, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at I think it was a Christmas party a while ago, and someone called Timo, who runs a conference and business research group called Cosmonauts, was there, and we got chatting. We knew each other already, and he said, why don't you do events? And I said, well, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. So I never really had the resources to put on a big conference.
Right. A lot of work, a lot of effort.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, honestly, until you try and do a multi-hundred person conference with multiple sponsors and all the stuff that goes with that and all the speakers, you don't realize how much work it is just for ticketing. Just getting a ticket to like 400 people,
right?
It's huge amount of work. So I just thought, no way. But then Timo was very enthusiastic, and he said, yeah, no, don't worry, we'll handle all the logistics. And so that's how it all started. So last October, which honestly feels like a lifetime away now, doesn't it?
It does, really. Very much so.
I think it was just last October, wasn't it? My God, so that was only how many months ago?
6 months ago.
Honestly, if you told me that was 2 years ago, I would believe you.
Yeah.
So we did it, and it was very, very successful. The idea was to have sort of medium-sized conference, sort of 300, 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
We got some great speakers. We were very lucky. Basically, everybody I asked to be a speaker turned up. We got most of the Magic Circle, got some very big GCs from big corporates. So yeah, it was good. And then, so we did that. And then we just thought, right, where next? You know, and I said, well, you know, America obviously is the biggest legal market in the world. And then we were kind of thinking, well, where in America? And I love California. My best friend from England lives in California. He's married a girl out there, and he settled down. And I go out to visit him quite a lot. And I love California in general. It's one of my favorite, probably my favorite part of America. I love the West Coast in general. And I just thought, yeah. And it makes total sense because California, innovation, technology,
Silicon Valley.
Exactly. And there's really, I mean, when I started, there weren't that many legal tech companies who were well known in California. There's a whole bunch of them now. You know, you've got like Gavalytics, Legalmation, Zero, a whole bunch of them. Really, it's really growing. The number is growing more and more rapidly. Evisort, Black Boiler, you know, Specifio. The list just goes on. I mean,
it's a huge list. So you got Hello Divorce, Hire and Esquire. You've got, I mean, the list is massive. Now down south, you've got Trellis Law and Case Spear, and I mean, it's massive in California. In the Silicon Valley, we all are aware of the Atrium startup out of there,
of course, as well.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really. Really quite impressive. And we, as a Californian, I do appreciate your love of California. So thank you for that. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Ozzy Osbourne is there. So that pretty much settled it.
That settled it. Yeah, that settled it.
In fact, we were trying to get him to give the keynote.
I believe it.
Really expensive. Couldn't afford him.
Yeah, I couldn't afford him. Okay. Bummer.
It would have been cool, though, wouldn't it? But anyway, so obviously this thing called the coronavirus has come along, and we'd got all the panels done. Every single panel was populated. We'd got our main sponsor, which is Elevate. So thank you, Elevate. Cheers to Elevate. A whole bunch of other great companies were getting on board, and then coronavirus hit, and most of the scientists are saying that it's probably going to peak in sort of end of May, beginning of June. Being realistic, you can't really have a conference a couple of days after the peak. It's just not feasible.
Right.
So we're going to move it to November. So if anyone's listening, and we will be doing a formal announcement very soon, probably on Monday or Tuesday. So Legal Innovators California will now be on November the 19th, and it will still be in San Francisco, and it will still be in the same location.
Excellent. Outstanding. I'll be looking forward to seeing you there and meeting you in person. For those who are listening to this later, that you can find out more information about Legal Innovators California at legalinnovatorscalifornia.com. So I like that you that you made the URL just perfect for that. legalinnovatorscalifornia.com. So hopefully our listeners and visitors here in the room today will join us at this conference in November. Yes, it was the COVID-19 kind of threw a wrench in things there. I also had when I thought about it earlier when I said, well, we were going to do this conference in April. I was thinking of the other conferences that I had to go to in April, and then it was June 18th that you had Legal Innovators California planned. So even I'm still confused as to what's going on with this whole all these conferences getting canceled or postponed. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and of course we should stress that we are just simply moving it to,
that's right.
As I was saying to Bob Ambrogi yesterday, effectively just think of it as, you know, it's a carnival. We're hooking it up to a trailer. We're shipping it down the line. We're going to unhook it in November, and it's all going to carry on again. And we're hoping, in diary permitting, that we'll have at least 80 to 90% of exactly the same speakers.
Excellent.
A couple of people won't be able. They'll have weddings and whatever to go to. They won't be able to make it. The vast majority will. So it will effectively be the same.
Okay, great. That's wonderful to hear. So hopefully everybody out there go over to Legal Innovators California. This is a media I am a media partner with Richard on this, or LegalTechLIVE is. So go and support this. Check out the list of speakers very impressive group of people, and hopefully we will see you there. Richard, what are you seeing? I mean, I think it is I haven't done one of these discussions about COVID-19 and how it's impacting the sector that we both are active in. What are you seeing out there?
Well, well, okay.
It's a very general question. I apologize.
Yeah. Well, let's do law firms first quickly and get them
Sure.
out. So I think the law firms. I was actually quite optimistic initially. I was interviewed in the Times last week, and I was quite optimistic. I was saying, everything will go into reverse. M&A lawyers will become restructuring lawyers, and they'll kind of muddle through, and unless it goes on for a couple of months, and then the proverbial will hit the fan, and will be 2008, 2009. Unfortunately, I think it's actually it's happening much more rapidly than I expected. I think certain firms are very busy, but parts of those firms are very busy. But I think a lot of the firms that just don't have really, really mega clients and don't have that top level relationship with Goldman Sachs and Barclays and Alliance Insurance and the British Airways,
Fortune 100s and those types.
Exactly. I think those companies are not going to go bust. Those banks, insurance companies, they won't go bust. Whatever happens, they will keep going. Well, touch wood. They have huge restructuring needs, huge legal needs, all kinds of tasks, review tasks. They got, you name it. It's all happening at once. Surges of work coming off these companies. And that's going to the largest and best law firms in the world. Problem is that if you go down a tier or two, you start to get to sort of more medium to large size companies who basically have just been sideswiped by what's just happened. Don't know what to do, really. They don't have huge legal budgets, and they're not really generating huge amounts of work because any transactional work has just gone. IPOs have gone. Who's registering patents at the moment? Who's starting litigation? They don't absolutely have to.
Right.
Nobody is. It's all that middle tier of work is just evaporating. And so I think we're going to see some, I hate to say it, but I think we're going to see some retrenchments pretty fast. I mean, Norton Rose has already gone to a 4-day week, apparently.
Oh, have they? I didn't hear that yet.
It's very extreme because we're only in the UK, we're only like a week, 10 days into this.
Yeah. I mean,
full scale.
Right. Yeah, you guys were a little behind. California, we were a little more advanced on our lockdown, so we're just about into week 3 of it. And you guys were, I think, the UK was maybe a week or 10 days behind us. So yeah, that's so if you're only 10 days in, that is a pretty incredible change to go to 4-day work week.
It is. But in some ways, it's a good sign. I mean, when I was talking to Bob about this yesterday, and I said, a lot of this is about culture, because if a business is effectively solvent, I mean, law firms, unless a law firm has huge amounts of debt, right, that the equity partners just say, we do not want to be saddled with this debt, and the banks come knocking, and then partners start departing because they're trying to leave. It's like pass the parcel. The partners are like, I'm not going to get left with this. And they start streaming away. And then, of course, the equity pool gets smaller and smaller, and the debt relative to the number of partners gets bigger and bigger. And then, of course, you get a collapse. That can happen very rapidly in America because you don't have restrictive covenants in the same way that you get in the UK. So, and we saw that. We saw a couple of law firms, both in the US and the UK, collapse because of that. They opened too many offices. They had too much debt.
Yeah, in just the last year, there were several.
Yeah, exactly. Even in relatively good times, it can happen.
Yep.
I think we could see some of that happening, for definite. But one of the nice things is that some of the law firms are clearly the equity partnerships are taking it on the chin. They're saying, right, well, we'll sacrifice our profit share. We won't be greedy. We'd rather keep as many people employed as possible.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, rather than just taking it to the edge.
Yeah, that's nice to hear that some are adjusting that way. Um, we do have a question here from Adam Long. I don't know if you know Adam. He's a friend of the show and a friend of Legal Tech. He has a serious question for you. What is your take? And this kind of goes into, we touched on legal to begin with, and not specifically legal tech. But he said, "What's your take on the role of lawyers, legal tech, on helping companies to restructure business relationships, example, with suppliers and customers?" Uh,
The role of lawyers or the role of legal tech companies?
he asked both, so maybe if you can break it down.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, should stress that.
Yep.
Artificial Lawyer is the title of my blog website. I am not a lawyer myself. Um,
But
well,
as
I
a
mean,
legal economist, you've seen this happen as a
yeah, I mean,
consultant to law
I've
firms.
been, I mean, particularly when I was working in the city as an advisor. I mean, I was sitting down with boards and managing partners every week, listening to the inside, and I can tell you the things that they really care about are things like profit margins and billables, and they really, really, really watch that money very, very closely. They will be watching the income stream, very,
Mm-hmm.
very closely. This idea that they're all just kind of wondering about big picture stuff, like, should I get a, should I invest in, I don't know, blockchain technology? That's probably not what they're thinking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, to answer the question, yeah, obviously, I think the lawyers have got an enormous part to play, because they need, a lot of companies need someone externally to rely on. It's not so much for law; it's actually having someone who can actually pick up the problem and manage it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Lawyers are actually very good at that. They can project manage. They can say, right, okay, you know, tell us what your problem is. We will go out and solve it as best as we can, and they'll fight your corner.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing. It's one of the great things about the legal world. There's people out there who, unfortunately, you have to pay them a lot of money,
Right.
but they will fight your corner.
Right,
They'll
right,
defend you.
and so they would be, in my mind, not that I'm answering this question for you, Adam, but I think lawyers will be having a huge role in restructuring business relationships, because there's going to be significant negotiation with vendors and suppliers, and about, well, look, I know we've signed up for this contract, but times have changed. We need to restructure this engagement so that it fits within current budgetary restraints. Wouldn't you expect lawyers will be doing a lot of that kind of work going forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, unpicking contracts is going to be key. I mean, for example, and this answers both questions really, this week I've been doing some research asking various legal tech companies if they're renegotiating their leases and their rental agreements with offices.
Mm-hmm.
Buyers. Some haven't, but the majority are in some kinds of discussion. Some have got a 50% holiday sort of reduction. Others are in some very interesting positions. Like some people are inside WeWork. Now WeWork was about to go bust, and
Mm-hmm.
then the Japanese SoftBank was going to bail them out effectively, but they pulled that deal. So if WeWork goes bust, what's going to happen to all the startups, legal startups who are operating out of those? So there's all kinds of this like contractual morass that
Mm-hmm.
they've got to deal with. So yeah, absolutely. To Adam's question, yeah. But I mean, on the legal tech point specifically, well, if you're only dealing with a single contract, you probably don't need a lot of legal technology to help you get through a single contract. You might need some legal research, knowledge management tools, but it's only really when we get into very, very large scale contracts, which we could do. For example, say banks with futures contracts. I'm hoping, touch wood, really, really hoping that the banks have not screwed up like they did a
Mm-hmm.
decade or so ago, and that they do know what all of their derivatives are actually saying.
Right.
Because
It's
of
a
course
fair concern. It's a fair concern.
that was the main problem, because a friend who works at one of the legal AI companies. His boss told me the story that he was at one of the global investment banks during the crisis, and it was when he was working for a big management consultancy, and they brought in their crack team to help them figure out what was in all their contracts, so they could decide if they were going to go bankrupt or not. So cataclysmic kind of stuff. And the long and the short of it is that the general counsel said, we don't know what's in our contracts, and we have like 25 million of them, because derivatives contracts are like confetti. They're just being like knocked out, every day. And it would have just crushed the bank. As it turned out, it was all fine in the end. But do all these big corporates know what's in their contracts? Do the banks know what's in the contracts? Do the insurance companies know and understand their exposure?
That sounds like an opportunity also for certain legal tech companies who offer the contract review, contract automation types of services.
The contract analysis, contract review. Yeah, I mean, the big, the classic legal AI company. Your unstructured documents and data. We will crunch it. We will find out what's relevant and important. We'll provide you with insights that you can act upon, and we'll do it very, very quickly. The feedback that I'm getting from the market is the area of sort of high finance and banking and insurance, though that kind of sector of clients is creating a lot of demand for AI technology, machine learning technology. Who can help?
Good to hear.
Yeah, which is very good to hear. And again, but also it's partially because they were kind of set up to use it. They'd probably played with it in the past.
Right.
If you're a mid-sized company, you've got a very small legal team, are you going to suddenly go, yeah, we need this new technology? You haven't even trialed it. You don't even know how to use it. The law firms who advise you probably don't use it either. So, I mean, the real impact of legal technology I think is going to be limited to... One thing that one guy told me on Friday was, we've basically been told until the picture clears, there will be no new acquisition of technology at this law firm.
Okay. Which is a fear. I actually asked in the legal tech community on Facebook about this, what people are hearing about layoffs and slowing of business in the legal tech space, because this is something that you had reported on earlier this week with Disco doing some last. So let's segue into that.
Yeah.
If there's going to be no new acquisitions, this is going to be very hard on startups. And we're a pro founder, pro startup show, but there is going to be some significant issues.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. The very, 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 very small companies will probably ride this out. If you've got a staff of, say, 10, and you've got a group of developers in Romania, right, and you've got some cash in the bank, and you've got 2 or 3 small clients and 2 or 3 pilot clients, and you're just kind of turning over, you might say, okay, we're not going to win any new clients for the next 2 or 3 months. But it's okay, because we're still effectively in development, really.
Right.
We're a seed round, A series at the most. Expectations on us are quite low. We've been given $500,000. The founders, who are the main shareholders, have taken their earnings down to almost zero. They're effectively living off their savings. They're not going to sack anyone. They'll just keep going. They could give up. It'd be silly to, really, because this will all be over in a few months.
Right.
So they would be silly to give up. The giant companies like Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis, they will of course survive. Will they sack some people? Yes. I can speak from personal experience. I used to work for Thomson Reuters for 12 months when I was a management consultant. I was part of the Hildebrandt Baker Robbins advisory group. And I can tell you that when the hammer comes down, they just shave bits off that company, within like 24 hours. They just go, right, cost cutting.
That's it.
Yeah.
which is understandable. If there's going to be revenue is going to slow, and then you have to cut the fat. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing, but these companies have survived by doing some of this and making it through difficult times.
Yeah, well, exactly. And then, of course, the question is, and I wanted to use this as my headline, but is disco as dead as disco? And the
That's
answer is disco will be pleased to hear, I think, I'm pretty sure anyway, is no, they're not dead. They're in a bit of a pickle though. I mean, they took $83 million last year. Can you imagine that? $83 million. They were on this massive growth trajectory. And now suddenly they're into an environment where very, very, very little e-discovery will take place. Because again, all the
yeah.
courts are closed. The medium to large size companies are putting a pin in it. The super mega litigation, let's say between Google and I don't know, the European Commission on antitrust issues, well, that will just trundle on,
Yeah.
because that won't be resolved until 2025. There's no point stopping that. We'll just carry on. But a lot of the other stuff is just gone.
Yeah, and generally you take some form of venture capital that is runway oftentimes for 18 to 24 months in that.
Exactly. I
So
think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't appreciate about venture capital is that you start to dance to someone else's tune.
yeah.
I from speaking to early seed and Series A people, they're pretty, the investors are pretty relaxed at that point. They're not putting too much pressure on you. They don't want to break you before you've got up and running. Once you get into B and C and you start to get into very large figures, the pressure is definitely there. I think you've got to be a very strong management team to say to the investors, sorry, mate, these are unusual circumstances. You're not going to get even half the growth you were expecting out of us this year.
Very difficult, and find yourself in a very difficult place. And we should note that selling in legal tech vendors, it is difficult from the get-go because it is a long sales cycle.
It is.
So this adds an extra layer of difficulty for legal tech providers.
It is. It is. I always say to people, I mean, for some tech can take 18 months to sell. And certainly, you're looking on average probably 3 to 6 months, I would have thought. And even once it comes through the door, the innovation team or tech team or whatever you want to call them will probably be running tests on it. They'll do some internal pilots, and then only when that is over will you finally get the real signature.
Right.
So, I mean, my advice to everyone, and I've been saying this in Artificial Lawyer, is, don't give up. Keep pushing on the sales. Be realistic. Don't expect them to sign you this week. In fact, the next quarter, they probably won't.
Right.
Build that relationship, do demos, build some trust, inform the audience, raise up the capacity in the market, so they understand what it is, what it does, how it helps them, provide case studies, do the thought leadership, do all of this. And hopefully when this is over, you'll have a queue, a line around the block. Because if you drop all your sales and business development until, say, the summer, you're going to lose the next quarter, and then you'll probably lose the quarter after that because you'll be trying to catch up with yourself.
Right. And there's but there are I get excited for downturns in a weird sort of way, and not morbid, but a downturn, I think, especially people who are now leaving very comfortable jobs, potentially, they're going to start working on those innovation ideas that they've had. And I think some really amazing innovations will take place in the next 18 to 24 months. But one thing that this is a real opportunity for legal tech companies, and I'm wondering if you've heard any of these sort of similar use cases, is friends have said what they are doing is potentially extending licenses to more users who are now having to work from home. So they're not in the law firm anymore. So they've extended licenses to more users who are now working from home, which allows them to continue using that legal technology. And so that is a real opportunity for companies to endear themselves to these users. If you can find innovative ways to help the law firms or help others that you serve to continue using your service in a difficult time, then that is a way to continue to keep and maybe retain or gain more of a following, gain more users in the future. Have you heard anybody else, any legal tech companies doing anything innovative in order to keep people working?
Well, I mean, nothing too radical. I mean, the truth is, I mean, most of the websites in America, and my website and others have just basically been flooding the internet with news about people offering free services.
Mm-hmm.
Like 12 months for free,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Or if you're a small law firm, you get special prices, all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I suppose one of the more interesting ones was Clio,
Mm-hmm.
creating $1 million fund to help support small law firms. But I mean, fundamentally, it's the same thing, really.
Right.
At the end of the day, a lot of legal tech companies realize that no new customers are going to get signed for the next couple of months. What the hell can they do? So they do something that's kind of altruistic and help people, but equally, let's be honest, they're all businesses, and this is business generation as well.
It is.
Of course it is. I mean, these are not a group of Mother Teresas.
Right.
And it would be weird if they were. They're businesses. So they are trying to do something good, but they're also, it's marketing. It's a freemium model. You get people interested in what you do. When the wallet opens again, which it always will, then, as mentioned, you'll have this ready-made pipeline to come and help you. It's a very smart strategy.
I think it's great. I think it's brilliant. It helps people right now when they need it. And then if you can upsell them at a later, and you get the user data and the contact information and in all that. And so if I can help them up front now when they're going to have trouble and they need my service, and then we can upsell them at a later date or upgrade them at a later date, I think it's I think it's an appropriate use, as you mentioned, the freemium model. I think it's a brilliant use of, and allows you to adapt to a difficult time while still getting users and seeing how those users are using your product.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of innovation, that's basically it. That's all I've seen so far. I mean, it's pretty hard to suddenly pivot from your sales model to something completely radically different.
Right.
There isn't much they can do. I mean, at the end of the day, they sell software.
Yeah.
It's like they have limited superpowers.
Yeah. If you're hugely successful, you can do things larger monetary things like Clio's doing, which I think is a wonderful thing that they've offered. But for those other smaller startups or small and medium size startups, the freemium model is probably the best thing they can do. We have a question from I believe a mutual friend, Joanna Goodman, who says, have you heard from legal tech startup investors about their plans for short and medium term? Are they still investing, etc.?
I haven't spoken to any investors, but I've been speaking to a lot of the tech companies. I would imagine, well, for example, I did a story on Friday about Solomonic, which is a small litigation prediction startup that's doing very well. They've just secured their first external funding. So I guess that is, proof in itself that people are thinking long term. Actually, I just had an email from a mutual acquaintance, excuse me, from Canada, He just sent me a bit of a tip that a well-known company has also just secured a large funding round. So the funding is still coming in as we
Yep.
speak, right? Now, of course, this funding was negotiated a month, 2 months, 3 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
because founders will go effectively on a funding round. They will just do a tour of all the investors, trying to drum it up. This can take months and months and months, and then you've got negotiations, blah blah blah. Equity balance, all that kind of stuff. So, in some ways, you could say this is historic.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to market myself, if I had a little legal tech company, I was ringing up, say, Seed Camp or other well-known investors and saying, "Hey, would you like to give me $500,000 today?" They might say, "Give us a call back in 2 months, could you?"
Right.
So to answer Joanna's question, I think people who started their investment generation a couple of months ago, they'll probably be okay. And if they've already, found someone to support them, if you're going fresh to the market right now, it could be tricky. And then, of course, that raises some interesting points, which you mentioned earlier about your runway.
Mm-hmm.
Burning through the tank of gasoline and running out of gas.
Yeah.
Then what happens? Because of
Yeah.
course, this is the thing. You see, once you get to sort of B and C, you've grown quite a lot. You've got quite a high cost base.
And
If your revenue
usually
is over,
significant revenue at that point too.
yeah, you've got like 100, 200, 300 staff. You've got a big office. Your overheads are scary,
Right.
and it all works out because you're on the up and up.
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly you're not. You're flat. Cost base stays the same. Suddenly you're sucking the gasoline out of the tank, but you're not moving forwards.
Right.
Now, I think my personal view is that's probably what happened at Disco. They'd had all this cash and they just thought, we're just literally throwing this money away.
Mm-hmm.
We're burning through it.
All in an effort to continue that rocket ship trajectory.
The hockey stick.
The hockey stick we've all heard about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the problem is that, here, C to A, you're kind of okay. Up here, you're Google,
Mm-hmm.
you'll survive anything. But it's that bit there. It's that kind of pressure curve there where
Mm-hmm.
you've grown, you've taken on a lot of capital, your costs are pretty high, and if anything dents that trajectory.
Yeah. And for our podcast listeners later, Richard just did a very scientific graph with the use of his pen on video. So if you want to see that scientific graph, come back and look at the video replay for podcast listeners. But you're right. You find yourself in a difficult spot. To all our guests who are listening in, we've got Ivan from Sofia. Is visiting from Sofia today. If you have questions, we've got about 15 minutes left with Richard Tromans of ArtificialLawyer. So please get your questions in.
Actually, Nick, can I just make one announcement while?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in May, I think it's going to be the 19th of May, the 20th and the 21st, we'll be doing, so Legal Innovators is also going to do an online version.
Oh, good.
Which will be the 19th, 20th, and 21st of May this year. And we'll be having multiple panels each day over 3 days. And each day we'll have a different theme. We'll be announcing more information soon. But we're going to have speakers from the UK, from Europe, and also from the US on each of those panels. So effectively, we'll be doing, in addition to California and London, which will still be in October, we'll be running this online one as well.
Excellent.
So strangely, my life is that people keep asking me, "Are you busy?" And I'm like, "You have no idea how busy I am. I'm now doing 3 conferences. I was only doing 2 people, now I'm doing 3."
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been really swamped the last 3 weeks in working from home. So I had a follow-up question, and it looks like Adam has one as well. A follow-up question comment. My expectation, and I'm wondering if you've heard anything. I've heard some grumblings about this. My expectation is you're still going to get some seed investment, but where you may have gotten $500,000 in the past, you may start looking at 250 or 300,000. I'm expecting the size of the checks, and I've heard just some small anecdotal evidence of this, but those you may still be able to raise, but the amounts you may be able to raise are probably going to be reduced. Are you hearing anything like that from startups?
No, not yet, not yet. And the funny thing is, I was talking to one company that's probably gone past startup. It's probably what you would call a mature legal tech company now. And I asked them how they were doing, and they replied, "We're doing fine. If you hear about any company that you think we can take over,
Yeah,
please tell us." And another company I spoke to said, "We don't particularly want to take over any other companies, but we are hiring like crazy right now, and it's a huge opportunity to pick up really good machine learning experts
interesting.
who may leave where they are because really good machine learning people are hard to find."
Yeah, hard to find, and you usually have to pay a premium
Exactly.
for that expertise.
So some companies, I mean, aside from the funding bit, some companies are looking at this and going, "Great,
Right. Yeah,
not
I think
not
there's
great globally, but great for us."
great for us. Yeah, no, I've already heard. Told you that I'm cautiously optimistic about this time, certainly because of the innovations that I think will come out of this. But I do think others will see some real opportunities to find the right talent, and to make some potentially better acquisitions, or acquisition that would be better pricing for them. Those are some things I've also heard some people share, and I think there are going to be opportunities at this time. Um, Adam asks, Richard, some have expressed optimism that the pandemic is going to force a quote unquote reset in the legal industry to adopt technology. And he gives an example: U.S. courts who have been reluctant to adopt e-filing and telephonic hearings are under pressure to adopt these innovations. Wondering what your take on it is. Certainly, I know that I'm hoping that they will use video hearings and things like that. I think it's time for a reset, but what are you hearing in the UK?
I think, well, I mean, in theory, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at revolutions, I'm a big history buff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key phrases for all revolutions is you need the right conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionaries exist in every society, in every epoch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are different levers and things that move things around and keep things fermenting. But very, very few revolutions ever actually happen because you need the right conditions.
Right.
You need a whole bunch of things to fall into place to have a real systemic change, where something that has been held back, which could be a good idea or has some kind of moral argument behind it, to suddenly rush forward and become reality, become accepted by everybody as like, okay, the game has changed, new world order. Boom. So bringing that to legal tech, and I think it's true, because suddenly you're in a scenario where old methods are unfeasible,
Mm-hmm.
and the new methods will prove themselves. It's often if you look at a lot of things where society has changed quite rapidly, it's usually often during the world wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like the creation of the NHS, for example. It's a good example.
Right.
After the country had suffered so much, so many people had died. The people of Britain had sacrificed hugely, during the war, hugely.
Right.
And they voted out the wartime governments and created the NHS, because it was like,
Right.
sorry guys, new status quo. We've proven ourselves. We deserve real change.
Right.
And I think, well, so we're going completely off subject now, but I mean, I think
No,
there's this,
tangents are good. Tangents are good.
I mean, when you completely change the basis of doing things, I think, yeah. So going back to Adam's point, I can certainly see the court service doing this, embracing this. I know Richard Susskind, he's been doing a lot of good work on this. He's created this resource site to
Mm-hmm.
promote video conferencing and remote courts and so forth, digital courts. But yeah, I mean, because I don't know if you had time to read it. I did an April Fool's story about
No, I
introverts.
did. I think I missed it.
Okay, it was. I did one about Trump as well, but the one about introverts was much more popular. Surprisingly, I don't know why, but
Interesting.
I was making fun of Trump, by the way. But the basically the long and the short of it was that people have proven you can run a law firm in an atomized state. You don't have to be in the office. You don't even need a office, really. You need meeting rooms, perhaps, and
Right.
a server. Yeah, and that's it.
That's it.
And introverted people who don't like working in offices, who don't like to be in big groups, effectively were campaigning to never go back to the office. And then when April Fool's Day was over, I put a little subtext to say, actually, even though this was humorously done, it actually is dead serious, because actually 20-30% of all people don't like working in groups. It's
Right.
just the way people are. And yet we're forced to operate like that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think things will change when we come back.
Yeah. I'm hoping that some of those changes are taking place right now in California, where we seem to have been ahead of many other places as far as our response to coronavirus or COVID-19. Many of the Silicon Valley big businesses were the ones who were even earlier than our government to ask people to go and work from home. And I think you will find out that not some people will do really well working at home, and I think you'll find that not all that much productivity will be lost. And maybe in certain talent will be even more productive. So I think that will spread amongst the legal community as well.
Well, I think this is the thing. I think it's the problem with the law is that until quite recently, I mean, home working wasn't even allowed at all until last decade or so. Presenteeism was the culture.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically a bunch of middle-aged men who ran the show. They liked to be in an office, and you were going to be in the office whether you liked it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't set up for anybody else.
Right.
Middle-aged, middle-aged extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
Although frankly, a lot of lawyers, even though they can be extroverts, I think actually are quite introverted in
Sure.
I think the workplace has become much more diverse. I think law firms have changed. They do allow people to work from home already. And I think really the next step is just simply to say, look, we're making people's lives a misery, forcing them to be in the office every day. We just need to trust people. And also then we can actually save money. We could reduce our office space, which is, other than salaries, is the single biggest expense.
Sure, you bet.
So, I mean, office space has actually led to bankruptcies of law firms.
I believe it.
So if you could cut that bill by 30% and your workforce becomes more productive and happier and more likely to stay with you, you'd be nuts not to do it.
You would be nuts not to do it. And hopefully those issues will transition courts as well, which is where a lot of the bottlenecking in this profession ends up, and not necessarily the court's fault, because they are tragically underfunded in the U.S. certainly.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
You should, I mean, I don't know if you saw my story that I did about India.
No, I don't know if I saw that one. When was that one?
There's this fantastic startup that's just got going in India, and they're trying to.
No, I did. Was this the pre-solve folks?
Yeah, and
yes,
can you remember the average time to settle or to solve a civil dispute in India is 13 years, 13 years. That's the average.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is.
It started because the lady who started the company, she was in the court. I can't remember what her role was in the exact case, but one of the lawyers or the judge said basically this case will be settled by the children of the appellant.
Unreal. Unbelievable. I mean, what a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally, that's just how it will be. Not again. Thankfully, things aren't quite as extreme in the US or UK, but I mean, we're not amazingly much better either.
Yeah, but you do have a little bit more forward thinking. I hand it to them every time I see it. Singapore seems to be the most forward thinking as far as legal technology and in government working with legal technology and utilizing these services. They seem to always be leading the charge
I
in
think
legal service delivery.
no, definitely. I know they do a lot, and the government does a good job there. I mean, I think fundamentally, it's not necessarily about the courts or law firms or in-house teams or anything. It's the fundamental thing is just moving into a digital environment in the
Right,
same way with music. When was the last? I mean, except for a very small group of people who still buy vinyl. I
right.
understand a small group of people who still buy cassette tapes.
Oh,
Apparently,
really?
that's
That I
become a thing.
hadn't heard.
Yeah, yeah, they've raided their parents' attics or grandparents' attics, and they've pulled down the old '70s tape recorders, tape players.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, apparently a lot of all the cool bands they'll release their albums on cassette.
So there's but that is a specific group. That's those who
Yeah,
appreciate the vintage items.
exactly. And sort of bringing it back to law, I mean, and yet the 99% of people, music is digital,
Right.
purely digital. We need to do that with law. We just need to get to the stage where if you're sitting in an office and someone prints out a document, a contract, with the intention of posting it to someone for a signature, they get taken around the corner and someone
Yeah.
has a serious talk to them. Like, are you complete? Have you lost it?
Right.
Why did you
Right.
print that contract out?
Just sign it digitally and send it.
Yeah, and everything, because once everything is digital and everything is machine readable, then my favorite subject, which is natural language processing, machine learning software,
Sure.
really comes into its own. And then of course, smaller law firms who at the moment are pretty much excluded from all of this technology because they can't afford it,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't have the volume to make it worth affording it. Once everything is digital, tools that are cheaper and sort of, you might say, mass produced, that
Mm-hmm.
perhaps are not as amazing as the big city firms use, but are good enough for smaller firms, that could really take off.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of small law firms are still operating with filing cabinets.
Which is
Barristers, still go to court with boxes and boxes of papers.
Yeah, which is an interesting dichotomy because some of the most technologically competent lawyers that I know are in the solo and small practice, and you so but I understand that I know a specific group who is very technologically savvy, but there are many out there who are still doing have so many paper files, it's absurd. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really is the key. That really is the key. Um, I mean, I did a thing with the Legal Services Board, which is kind of like the umbrella regulator, overseer of legal regulation in the UK. My key point to them was it's not just about using fancy technology. You've got to encourage the smaller law firms to do this. Otherwise, I mean, this is a funny thing, isn't it? We talk about the legal market,
mhm.
and I say it unconsciously. I don't even think about it, but I know when I say to someone, if I say, "Hey, Nick, what's going on in the legal market?" I mean what's happening in the top 100 largest law firms.
Was yeah, and because so many of my friends are in the small and solo practice world, I probably think lawyers,
Mm.
just at large, not necessarily in the top 100. But that means we're also leaving out a huge portion of self-represented litigants and a variety of
Oh,
other legal services outside. So we're both thinking lawyers when you say what's going on in the legal market. You're thinking of the top 100. I'm thinking of solos and smalls, but we're only thinking lawyers.
and that strange grey area where is it law, is it not law? The
Hmm.
Joshua Browder and do not pay.
Right.
So, like, can I get a refund on my airline ticket rather than just having a voucher?
Right.
So, I mean, I just cancelled quite an expensive flight to California, and British Airways has given me a voucher. I didn't really want a voucher, I'd like a refund. But
Right.
you literally cannot get a refund, even though in law, you're allowed one.
Right.
And he's doing interesting work on that and all many other types of things. So,
Yeah, he's doing some really fascinating stuff.
I mean, so yeah, I mean, the legal pyramid, it just stretches off into infinity,
It
and
does.
the legal tech world, as you know, many people have said, he's pretty much focused on probably less than the top 100.
Right. Because that's where you make your money right now.
And also where the use cases are. I mean, there's not
Mm-hmm.
much point going to a local law firm and
Right.
offering a doc review system, because the biggest transaction they ever did had 100 contracts.
Right.
Kind of
Right.
pointless, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, fewer use cases. I don't want to keep you all day, Richard. Although I could
No,
continue,
no,
I could continue
I'm happy.
talking about this, and our folks are here and
Well,
asking
should
some questions.
we take some more questions?
Yeah, if anybody's got questions, we'll be wrapping this up in just a couple of minutes. So get your questions in, and we talked about bookending it with Legal Innovators California. So just go ahead and repeat for folks a little bit of information about that, uh, when it's going to be, and the digital option that you shared with me about midway through this, and we'll see
Okay.
if any other questions come in.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So basically, so Legal Innovators California in San Francisco, which was going to be in June, will now be in November, November the 19th. It will still be in California. It will still be in San Francisco at the same venue. It will hopefully have almost all the same speakers, same sponsors. So we're just moving it towards the end of the year. The London event, Legal Innovators London, is 2 days, in-house day and law firm day. That will also still be going ahead. That will be on the 6th, I think, no, 8th, 7th and 8th of October. And in May, we will be doing an online Legal Innovators, or Legal Innovators Online, which will be a 3-day conference with multiple panels with speakers from the US and UK. And that will be on the 19th, 20th, and 21st of May. So yeah, that's a lot of conferences.
A lot of conferences, and I do not envy you for October and November back to back right there. That is going to be something that's going to be a busy fall for you.
It is. It really, really is. But I'm also thinking that by the time we get out of this and we're actually allowed to run around and be free,
Right.
which probably won't be till July in terms of absolute freedom. I mean, I think the
Right.
peak will be what, end of May, June,
Yep.
and then
That.
there'll be kind of climb down slowly, going back to normal. Different parts of the economy being allowed to go out and play, but law firms, I think, because they're risk averse, won't give the all clear to their partners to attend events. I don't think until probably September.
Yeah.
Because
Interesting.
because if there's even a 10% chance that they're going to come back to the office with coronavirus and start the whole thing all over again,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say no way.
Yep.
They're going to wait till we're in the clear, and I don't think that's probably going to happen until the end of the summer. To be, you can literally just go out and hang out in a nightclub,
Right.
and nothing to worry about, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, we all have, and lawyers will be certainly more risk adverse on that. That is a fair point. One last question we have here from Adam is, he knows you covered this already, and Adam will beat a horse to death if I allow him to. But he just Adam's a friend, so I kid with him. He would be curious if you could recap where you see the opportunities over the next 2 to 3 months
For legal tech companies.
Legal tech. Yeah.
Okay, so one, large review tasks, panic crisis driven review tasks, particularly in banking, insurance, and large corporates, without a doubt. People who provide secure video services, considering that Zoom is regarded as not particularly secure. So services like that could be very, very useful. Some of the other stuff you might say is effectively like scaffolding, like practice management systems, doc automation, this kind of stuff. Are law firms going to suddenly rush out and buy a new doc automation system? No, their minds are somewhere else. Are they going to bring in a new billing system? Are they going to bring in a new workflow solution? They've got other things they're worried about. They want stuff that's going to help them with their immediate need right now. So there, I would definitely say on the review side. What else? I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, the truth is, I mean, work is dropping off.
Right.
You know, work is dropping off. What's an opportunity here? I mean, I think for legal tech companies in general, the main opportunity is effectively you've got 3 months where if you've got enough money in the bank, now is the time to just get your head down and improve your product.
Mm-hmm.
Get your marketing team to get out there, sell as much as you can in an environment that perhaps won't necessarily want to listen to you right now so much. But
Right.
do it on the basis that conversations and relationships started now, perhaps through a freemium model or type of beneficial arrangement. You will build those relationships, which will then come to fruition when this is over.
Yep.
I wish there was some kind of magic wand, some sort of silver bullet.
No, I don't think there is one. I think we're all figuring it out as we go, and some of us have been through more of these kind of downturns than others, and this one's going to be tough. And I think if you're building a product early stages right now, and you can do a freemium model like Richard has said, I think you've got a real chance to get a lot of user feedback and a lot of user data that you may have more difficulty getting in other times if it's something that's very helpful to folks. Try onboarding those folks for free right now and get that data and get those use cases. But yeah, this and Adam says thank you. That's great advice. And I thank you, Richard, for being here. I thank you for coming back for a second episode, and let's not wait as long for the next time.
Well, we'll have to do a special when you're in California, which will be in November.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll finally get to meet face to face and hopefully shake hands, but maybe we'll still be elbow bumping at that time. I'm not sure, but it'll be good to see you. Tell our replay viewers and listeners and audio listeners only where they can find you, Richard, and how they can get in contact with you.
Okay, sure. So as some of you know, the website is artificiallawyer.com. You can reach me at richard@artificiallawyer.com. Simple as that. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you may see me occasionally on Twitter.
I try to encourage him on Twitter by sharing as many of his articles that I can and read, but he doesn't make it over there as much as we'd like to see him. But he is busy writing regularly. I highly recommend you go over to his blog and read for some of the latest updates, for all the latest updates on legal technology. It's artificiallawyer.com. My guest today was Richard Tromans for this special episode. And Richard, this is my last episode until April 30th. I was planning a spring break because I had several conferences to attend, and now it's just a spring break without conferences. So this is the last episode we'll be doing till April 30th. My guest again, Richard Tromans of Artificial Lawyer. And make sure to go and check out legalinnovatorscalifornia.com. That for those of us in California or in the US who are interested, go over LegalTechLIVE and Artificial Lawyer are media partners on this. And I very much look forward to seeing you there in November.
Me too indeed. Beers on me.
Beers on Richard. Excellent. All right, Richard, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, you take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.